Hello, everyone. Welcome to another beautiful and exciting episode on Freedom Unlocked podcast, a space where we have authentic conversations that inspire healing, understanding, and personal growth. Today's episode shines a light on neurodiversity, helping us better understand the realities of life with both ADHD and autism, while challenging many of the misconceptions that still exist. Today's guest is Ellie, an UDHD educator, podcast host, and founder of Ellie AuDHD. Following her own late diagnosis, Ellie dedicates her life to helping neurodivergent people better understand themselves through education, honesty, and community. She hosts the AUDHD and then some podcasts and supports an online community of more than 43,000 people. Oh, wow. Where conversations around ADHD, autism, from masking burnout and relationships are approached with warmth, humor, authenticity, and sometimes a little swearing. Ali, welcome to Freedom Unlocked.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. Like, it's amazing. I've not been on many podcasts before. I'm normally the host, so if I take over, I'm so sorry. I need to learn to sit and let you ask the questions. But honestly, thank you so much, and I love the intro. It was great. Thank you.
Oh, oh, wow. Oh, well, thank you so much. And, the part of where, I talked about the humor and, it's quite interesting. You look like a funny person. Look at you be very funny as well.
Mm, sometimes we have to turn trauma into humor because otherwise we will cry. There's nothing else we can do with the trauma, so we have to turn it into humor. And so a lot of people say that, but I don't even mean to be funny. It just happens. It's just, I
Yeah.
don't know, it's irony or something. But thank you so much. I love that because I like to be down to earth. So I know that there's a lot of people that talk about autism and ADHD. There's a lot of doctors, there's a lot of coaches, there's a lot of professional people. But the thing is, not everyone that has autism or ADHD is a professional person. Sometimes they're just people like me. So I feel like it's so important that them neurodivergent people have someone that they can relate to. I used to go to a therapist when I was younger, when I was from 15 years old, and I'd sit in front of the therapist, and the therapist would be, middle age, white, well off Christian woman, and I am none of them things really, and I couldn't relate to her. So I thought, you know what? Let me just bring someone relatable for everybody instead of a doctor, and let me talk about neurodiversity with honesty.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. Well, I wouldn't want that to, go for too long. So I can, ask my question to
Yeah.
get. Yeah. So thank you so much for that as
Thank
well.
you.
To ease the tension for me as well. All right. So Ellie, I want to ask a question. It's more like a two question, just two question in one. But I'd love for you to dig deep on it and be able to explain it to my audience because I know a lot of people might not know what ADHD mean or autism, what it's actually about, right? So, for the listeners who maybe hearing the term for the first time, what exactly do you mean by uh, ADHD or ADHD? And how is it different from having ADHD or autism on your own?
Okay, I'm glad you asked me this because so autism is a neuro thing. It's a neurotype, and there are a lot of autistic people around, and we kind of know what autism is. There's also ADHD, and there's a lot of ADHD people around, and they tend to be more. Sometimes, not always, I'm not tarring everyone with the same brush. They seem to be more, hyperactive or um quick thinking and etc. So the thing is, when you bring these two neurotypes together, the autistic neurotype and the ADHD neurotype, in one brain, they conflict. So the ADHD wants spontaneity and excitement and stuff. But the autism wants, they want to sit down at home and read a newspaper with their pipe and slippers. So you're bringing two personalities into one head. So unfortunately, I don't just have autism and I don't just have ADHD. I have both of them, and they are both very different people living in my head. So sometimes, I want a house, like a real house that's tidy and clean, and my autism needs that. I need routine and I need all of these things. But unfortunately, my ADHD gives me very, very, very bad executive functioning. So I can't do any of them things. So it's so stressful for me because I want these things, but I can't execute them because my ADHD doesn't allow me to execute them. So ADHD and autism together is separate to ADHD and autism by themselves, and it is a new thing that we're starting to realize. There isn't a test for ADHD, there's a test for autism and there's a test for ADHD separately, but unfortunately at the moment they can't test you for both, so you have to get the both diagnoses and put them together. But I generally find that ADHD people are different to autistic people and ADHD people because we have them conflicting personalities inside us, so we're a bit of both. It's a mix of culture, and it's sometimes really hard because it feels like we have two personalities fighting each other.
Oh, great. Great. Thank you so much. Now, it all makes sense now because, the way you talk about it, it's so, you know, enlightening, refreshing, and it sounds like one that, really had gone through an experience,
Mm,
right? So, I could get that in your voice and with the way you explain. And, you've received your diagnosis later in life. And, I want to ask, looking back,
yeah.
Ellie, what were some of the signs that, suddenly made sense once you understand you were um, all DHD?
Okay, so I've struggled all my life. I had a traumatic childhood, which was nothing to do with neurodivergence. And so I always thought I was struggling because I had a traumatic childhood. So I thought that that was what it was. I couldn't really relate to anyone. Um, and I struggled my whole life. And it was only when I had my children, and my children are now in their 20s, it's only when I had my children that people started saying to me, I think your children are autistic. And I was offended. I was like, no, that's a rude thing. I thought it was a rude thing to say because I thought autism was a bad thing. So when the teachers at the school and everyone started to point out my children are autistic, I was deeply offended. And then I went away and I'd done some research into it because research is my thing, which is an ADHD thing. Research is my thing. And I went and done some research and I was like, shit, this makes perfect sense for me. My whole life started to click into place and make sense. All of the reasons that I'd struggled all my life were down to trauma, but they were also down to ADHD. And if I would have known that I was ADHD from a child, I think my life would have been different. My parents sent me to school, and the teacher was trying to teach me how to be a neurotypical kid. But the thing is, I wasn't a neurotypical kid, and my brain worked really different. So every time I couldn't do anything like all of my other classmates, my teacher, you know, whether she meant it or not, she would tell me, in ways, more the ways than one, you're stupid, you can't do this, you can't do it like this. Ellie, what's wrong with you? And all my life, I internalized Ellie can't do it. Ellie's doing it wrong. But now I feel like I had an epiphany or a revelation because I wasn't doing it wrong. I was just trying to be a fish, and I'm not a fish. I'm a dinosaur. I was in a school with a lot of fish trying to swim, but I'm not a fish, and I've accepted that now. And I know that I have to have different strategies to make my life work. And I am about 20 years behind my counterparts and my siblings and stuff because I've struggled with ADHD. But I feel like now I have this knowledge, I can put them strategies in place and make life work for me. I can concentrate on my strengths and I can work on my weaknesses. Before, I didn't have that information. I just thought, Ellie, you're rubbish. Ellie, you can't do stuff like everyone else. But now I know, actually, Ellie, she's not rubbish. And she has to go and tell the whole world that if they aren't rubbish too, they may just be ADHD.
All right. So thank you so much, Ellie. So,
Thank
and I
you.
want to ask, I want us to draw, you know, these old things to those that are actually, experiencing this same, autism and ADHD issue.
Yeah,
You're very informed right now, and you did a lot of research, and you found that there wasn't the way people actually think it to be, right? You now get an understanding that it is. I really don't have to have an argument with someone because of it, or quarrel with someone because of it, because now you're very informed and you know what it is about, right? So I think
exactly.
there are a lot of people who actually, in actually have the same experience, but they don't know how to go about it. They
A
feel,
hundred, 100%.
ashamed, they feel down,
Yeah.
a lot of things happening, going through their mind, through their head. So I want you to tell my audience, right? What would you say to people or to someone who have this same experience that you had?
So I when I look back on it, I think it's crazy because I was so insulted when people would say, "Oh, your children are autistic," and I feel embarrassed about that now. And because it turns out I am autistic. And then after I came back from my autism diagnosis, my dad is very autistic. It's plainly clear for me
Mhm.
to see now, and he struggled his whole life. Very intelligent. He's made a lot of money from business. It hasn't stopped him, but he has had difficulties. And when I come home from my autism assessment, I said, Dad, I need to tell you, you're autistic too, and that's why you've had struggles. And he was offended too, because it seems as if you're telling someone that they've got a disability. But that was because we were coming from a place with no information. Now I'm armed with information. I don't feel that, yes, it is a disability. If someone turns on the big light in my house, sometimes I want to hit myself in the face. I have such bad sensory needs. So, yes, it is a disability, but it also can be a major ability as well. But when some people were telling me your child is autistic, I was seeing it as a bad thing. But actually, no, it is just a neurotype. And I think that's why it's so important. When I had my 3 children years ago and people would say they're autistic, I used to try and get that autism away from them. If I saw them doing something that was autistic seeming, I'd be like, don't do that, don't do that. Now, I've learned so much. I see that autism isn't a bad thing. It's just a different neurotype. And if you look at some of the most intelligent people, Einstein, very well thought out people, a lot of them are neurodivergent. But before we are taught about that, we don't know. So arming ourselves with knowledge is the right thing to do. I know a lot of people, especially from a lot of different communities, where I grew up, we have a vast array of cultures and races and etc. And everyone deals with it very differently. I find from a lot of different races. I've sometimes in some races it is a shame thing. A lot of people, when someone says, your child is autistic or ADHD, a lot of people find it quite a shameful thing. And I do understand that. But you have to go away and turn that thing into a positive thing for your child. God has given your child this, and you have to learn how to turn this into a positive thing. But the only way you can turn it into a positive thing is learn every single thing you can and help your child to 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 choose a different strategy, because their brain is never, no matter how hard you try to change your child's brain, you will never change it. So you need to accept it. It's a gift from God. It is inconvenient. Yes, sometimes it's shitty. Believe me, sometimes it's shitty. But you need to go now and learn how to make this cake with the ingredients that you've got.
All right, thank you so much for that. That's a beautiful, beautiful one. Yeah, I want to ask this important question as well, because a lot of people have different misconceptions about the ADHD, AUDHD, right?
Yeah,
So and autism,
yeah.
right? So a lot of misconceptions, and with the way you've explained it, it's actually not a disease.
No.
It's something. It's not something that actually needs a cure,
Hmm.
right? I think it's actually beautiful because you just see things in a different perspective,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
it's actually a beautiful thing, right? I don't think people should have misconceptions about it. So I would want to ask you, for the sake of the audience, right?
Yeah.
What are still, many misconceptions around the ADHD and, autism? And yeah, what are some of the biggest myths you would like to challenge today?
Okay, so when I used to tell people my children were autistic or ADHD, they would be like, "Oh, they can't read or write then," and I would be like, "No, are you crazy? Thank God, I'm Muslim, so I say Alhamdulillah. Thank God, my kids are really intelligent. So sometimes
No.
being autistic, it may, you don't have to be not able to read and not able to write to be autistic. Sometimes that is your strength or your talent, and a lot of people assume that you have a low IQ if you're neurodivergent. That's not the case. Of course, some people do have a low IQ if they're neurodivergent. Once you meet one neurodivergent person, you meet one neurodivergent person. They are all different. It's like saying, "Oh, you're Nigerian. Everyone Nigerian's the same." This is not true. The same if I say, "Oh, you're Arab, everyone Arab's the same." It's not
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
So, the same thing with neurodivergent people. We're not all of the same. Some of us are clever, some of us are intelligent, some of us are not. Some of us are mean, some of us are not mean. But I do feel like we have a similar culture. So when I meet someone who is AUDHD specifically, I feel like I can probably understand them, like we're coming from a similar place. And the misconceptions are crazy. Like everyone thinks, "Oh, if you've got ADHD, you must be naughty." Or some people at my children's school used to say, "Oh, my child's really naughty and they must have ADHD." Well, that's not true, because my child he's an adult now, had really, really bad ADHD and was very not breaking a rule. He would not ever break a rule. So just because you have ADHD, it doesn't mean that you're naughty. But on the other hand, it can mean that you're very naughty. So there isn't one set pattern for ADHD and autism. Once you've met one of these people, it doesn't mean that you know all of these people. We're all different. It's like a race. We all have our different features and our different characters, but we do have some combined shared cultures.
All right. So yeah, thank you for that, Ellie. You always speak openly about, masking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would actually love for you to, talk about it, and what it means, or what it actually look like in everyday life, and why it can become, so emotionally and physically exhausting.
Do you know what? This is a really appropriate one for talking to you, actually. So, when I was a kid, I just wanted to please everyone, and I never done it the right way. So I never made people happy, or I was never doing things the right way. And so what I would do is I would try and copy everybody around me. So that is called masking. So if you meet someone older, you try and act older. If you meet someone younger, you try and act younger. The thing is, I live in a very Nigerian community. So everyone around me was very Nigerian. So my
Mm.
mask, from when I was about 5 till when I was about 15, was Nigerian. Uh, so because I wanted to be like everyone around me, and everyone around me was Nigerian, I played that part. So,
Uh-huh.
I immersed myself in Nigerian culture. I learned a lot of Igbo. I ate a lot of Igbo. And that went on for years and years, because that was where I wanted to fit in with everybody around me. And then, I moved away and I moved into a different area, and I met new friends that liked, punk and Nirvana and stuff like that. And I found myself trying to be like them. It wasn't because I was lying. I just can always, like the chameleon, the amphibian, the chameleon. I can just always be whatever the people around me can be. And it's hard, it's really stressful, and it's tiring because I don't know who I am anymore. So, if I meet people of a certain culture, I will automatically digress into their culture. It's just an automatic thing. If someone serves me in the supermarket and they're Irish, I will automatically, my accent becomes Irish. And it's nothing bad. It's just I try and make people comfortable, and it's it's hard, it's draining, because at the end of the day, I was eating sushi the other day and I thought to myself, you know what? I don't think I even like this. Like, what the hell? And I realized that I had a friend once that liked sushi, and I just, went along with it to try and be cool. So, all these neurodivergent people that are learning now that they're neurodivergent, they don't know their true personality because, and this isn't everyone. Everything I say isn't everyone. This is just some of them. you know a lot of neurodivergent people don't know their true personality because for years they've been being someone else. So when they get diagnosed, there's a lot of unmasking, and it's hard to unmask when you don't actually knew who you was to begin with. So it's hard. It's Masking is one of the buzzwords of neurodivergence at the moment. It's definitely one of the big things that everyone should learn about when they learn that they are neurodivergent, because it makes a lot of sense. Now I realize, when I found out I was neurodivergent, I was like, yes, that's why I spoke with a Nigerian accent for like a decade. That's why I went to church. That's why I done this to try and fit in with everyone else, because I just wanted to make everyone feel comfortable. And it's crazy.
All right. All right. You always wanted to keep everyone happy, You just wanted to create a safe space, the room
Yeah.
where you won't be the odd one, right?
Yep.
It happens. It happens. It
But now
happens.
I accept I'm always going to be the odd one. And now I'm okay with it. But it's took me until, I'm 40 now. It's took me until 40 to learn to be me. And I still slip back into my old ways when I meet the same people, and I go back to the same ways. But it's took till 40 for me to be comfortable and authentically me, the person that God made me to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that was beautiful, Ellie. So I find it quite very hard, to think and to believe that, you know, you had an experience, with the childhood sexual abuse, domestic
Hmm.
violence, and addiction. I was it was quite hard for me to bring that up, or just bring that on and then ask her about it,
Yeah,
because
like
I already
casually.
felt,
Yeah.
yeah, because I already felt it was a lot. It was
Uh-huh.
a lot of experience, and you know one could not find it quite easy. A lot of people go through issues like this, and they're devastated. They become a shadow of themselves.
Yeah.
A whole lot of things happen to their mind, right? So, well, I just want you to to talk about it, because your story includes the childhood sexual abuse, domestic
Yeah.
violence, and the addiction. So I want to ask, how can trauma, really overlap with neurodivergence, because they're quite different, and
They are.
why are these two often misunderstood as well?
So they are quite different, but sometimes they present some of the same traits. So some people that have been through something like sexual abuse or abuse as a child, they mask as well because they don't want to be themselves, or they find it difficult to be themselves, or their personality hadn't already developed before they went through the trauma. So they then have to mask to be like other people. So some people that are not neurodivergent but they've been through trauma, they do similar traits to what neurodivergent people do. Not all of them, but some of them. But for example, a lot of people can be more susceptible to, unfortunately, and not all of them, childhood sexual abuse and domestic violence and drug addiction when you're neurodivergent, because it makes you a little vulnerable. And I was vulnerable because I wanted to please everyone around me. So not necessarily when I was a child, but when I was an adult, I would meet a partner, and I would want to please them because I'm masking to be like them, and I don't want them to leave me. So that makes me really susceptible to domestic abuse because, I I'm a people pleaser. So that makes neurodivergent people really easy targets, unfortunately. And I don't think that's what happened to me when I was a child. I just think that it just was my luck. This is what was meant to be. I was sexually abused as a child, and it's made me who I am today, thank God. But I do like to talk about it because, as a mother of 4 children, I think we need to be aware with our children that if they are neurodivergent, they are more susceptible to abuse, either in relationships, from family members, and etc. Because when you're neurodivergent, you receive a lot more bad negative criticism than your counterparts. You receive it at school, you receive it at home. Even if the people are not trying to, you do feel out of place. So if somebody approaches you and you're vulnerable, some people could take advantage of that. So I find it's my passion to teach parents to try not to criticize or let their child feel like the odd one out, because when you let them feel like that, and it's not purposeful, I've done it as well. I'm a parent and my children have made to feel the odd one out at times, but I find I'm really passionate that we try and instill our children with so much confidence, even when they're neurodivergent, even more so when they're neurodivergent, because if they feel like they're the odd one out, or they feel like they're doing something wrong, or they constantly have to please someone, they could be susceptible to being abused. And we don't want that for our children. So what we need to do is we need to embrace the neurodivergence and teach them to be confident with their neurodivergence and not accept bullshit, because there is always someone out there who is going to try and do something bad. It's the nature of the beast. The devil is everywhere. There's always someone that's going to try and do something bad to your child. Let's try and give them the armor and the defenses to be confident, even if they're neurodivergent.
Thank you so much. I want to ask this, Ellie, do you think there should be, policies on ground, probably in our schools, in our workplace, in our communities, policies that would, back people with, neurodivergent, ADHD, or autism people?
Yeah, I think it's a neurotype. So I think the same way as it was with everyone, I'm a big so with my autism and my ADHD and maybe just my personality, I'm a big one for justice. I think everything in the whole world should be so just. Things make me so angry when they're unfair to a particular race or religion or anything like that. I hate that. It makes me so angry. So I feel like everything should always be fair for everyone. There should always be a policy in place that should be fair for everyone. So yes, there should be something in the workplace that makes it fair for autistic people, the same way as it makes it fair for anyone else. And I feel like the only way we can put these things in place is make people aware of it. So when people meet me, they don't look at me and think, I'm able-bodied, I'm talkative, and etc. I'm a little bit strange, but some people are. But no one looks at me and thinks, she's got a disability. So what I want to do is I need to make awareness for people that actually you can look completely normal and act completely normal but have a disability. So if I signed my CV and I sent it to a store to get a job and I wrote on it, I'm autistic, you know what, the chances are I might not get that job. Because they will see that and they'll be like, she's disabled, and they will have their preconception in their head. Now, if I went to an interview and I spoke with the manager and they didn't know I was disabled, they might hire me because I talk, I'm a personable person. So they might hire me and then they will find out I'm ADHD. So what I like to do is I like to tell the world I'm ADHD because it confuses people, because they're like, wow, you know what? You can be ADHD and be normal. You can be ADHD and be a regular girl. You obviously are going to have struggles, but I need people to know that it is perfectly acceptable and you can be normal. A lot of people think when you're autistic, oh, she must be in a wheelchair, or she. No, 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 no. This is a backward way of thinking, an old-fashioned way of thinking. And the more knowledge we have, the more we can. You know what? There is certain gifts that I have been really blessed with because of my autism. I'm very good at the things I'm interested in. I'm very good at languages. I'm very good at this. And neurotypical people aren't always good at this. So I need people, when they find out their children are neurodivergent, I need people to say, okay, what is my child's skill? Now let me find something they can do with that. One of my children is autistic and their obsession is guitars. They're 20 years old now. I think it's highly unlikely that they will have a normal, regular job. They're just like me. They can talk, they can do this, they're very, very intelligent. But I find it unlikely that they're going to be able to settle into a workplace. So what I do is I said, okay, you go and learn every single thing about guitars you can ever learn in your life. You be the best person at fixing, making, branding guitars, and you make that your job. And that's what we need to do with our neurodivergent children. We need to find that one gift that they've got, and then we need to focus in on that, because there will be a lot of things that they're bad at. So we need to concentrate on a lot of things that they're good at.
All right, thank you so much, Ali. Thank you so much for that. That's actually very beautiful. Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
I just quickly asked a few questions that I have
Yeah,
for
of
this
course.
section for you. So through your community of more than 43,000 people,
Hmm.
um, what are some of the most common struggles you see the neurodivergent adults face today?
So it seems to be a big pandemic of people that are being diagnosed now, in their 40s, in their 50s, that always thought that they're weird, that they don't fit in, they never had friends at school, they've been bullied, and with that comes a lot of trauma. So not only are they finding out, actually, you're neurodivergent, but they're also finding out, you know, how am I going to deal with all this trauma that has been caused by me thinking I don't fit in all of my life? It's a lot to unpack in an older age. And as well, you feel a lot of relief. When I found out I was neurodivergent, I was like, phew, thank God. I now know that there is something, I'm not just crazy. I'm just neurodivergent. But also I felt sad because you know what? If I would have known when I was a kid, I would have felt a lot better about myself. And, my parents could have helped me. They helped me as much as they could, but they could have helped me a lot better if they had known. So we're coming with, I've got a community now, I think, thank God, 45,000 people. Most of them are late diagnosed neurodivergent. Sometimes they're self diagnosed because it's very hard to get a diagnosis and it's very expensive. But when you know, that you're autistic, you don't make it up. It's if you feel like you're autistic, you're probably autistic. And so this community is coming with a lot of people that are just tired, and they're angry at the system for not realizing sooner, and they're also emotional because they finally feel like they fit in somewhere, they finally feel like they're validated, and they're coming with a lot of trauma because of that neurodivergence. They've never felt like they fit in, so they've accepted real shit times sometimes from society. So there's a lot of healing to do. So that's the people I'm finding some very successful people as well that have used their neurodivergent gifts to get to very high places in life. But because of that, they've been in high places and they've had to, socialize all the time. So they're burnt out and they're tired, and they need a break. Not one neurodivergent person is the same as another neurodivergent person. You can have a neurodivergent, homeless person on the street that is addicted to drugs, and you can have a neurodivergent millionaire, you can have a neurodivergent Muslim and a neurodivergent Jew. It's, there's not one person that's the same, but there is similarities, and a lot of us right now are going through burnout. We're confused, we don't have a community. Some of us have broken marriages because we couldn't work ourselves out. A lot of us have neurodivergent children that we've struggled with. So, it's a whole community that is happy to find each other, and, we're very validated, but it's been a hard slog to get here.
Oh, wow, beautiful. Thank you so much, Ellie. Yeah, so how can, my audience and, the listeners connect with you or get access to your work?
Okay, so the thing with my work is I find that a lot of coaching and therapy and everything is very expensive. And also, it's very formal. I don't want that for people. I think people with ADHD need to be able to access things very cheaply and very not formal, very informally. Some of them might want formal, and that's okay. And I can point you in that right direction. But some people just need like a sister to hold their hand and talk them through it. And that's what I offer. So I have a website and it's www.leaudhd.com. And on that, you can find all my podcasts, which are all free. They're available on every platform. So Apple, Audible, Spotify. You can also find my it's a kind of talking therapy which is paid, but it's on a very very cheap scale because it's a second job for me. I don't need it. I just want to help people. You can also find so we have a community of 45,000 on Facebook in a Facebook group. But also we have a subscribers hub, which is $1 or 99p, £1 in English money. And what you do is you sign up to this subscribers hub and you get one big workbook sent to you a month. You get resources sent to you. You get all the information. We do a Zoom group once a month. You can be anywhere in the world. You can be absolutely anywhere and you can log on and you can connect with me. And that's £1. And I think I make it that accessible because I didn't want to put a price on it, but I can't send 45,000 people resources every month. And unfortunately, I can't have 45,000 people in a Zoom group because it becomes problematic. And so I put the minimum price I could that Facebook offered me, 99p, $1. And I made this small community from the big community. And, anyone is welcome to anyone as long as you're not homophobic, racist, or then you're welcome to join. The thing is, in that group of 45,000 people, not everyone's going to get on, and a lot of people argue and a lot of people have different opinions, and I take it personally upon myself to moderate that. I'm a mother, I have a full-time job, but I want to keep this a very safe space for 45,000 people. I have a team of moderators. I think there's 6 of them. They're very good. I make sure that I take on moderators that are not homophobic, not racist, not have no unfair thingies towards anyone. I handpick them moderators so that they will give everybody the best opportunities, and I make sure that I moderate that big group as well as I can, because at the end of the day, being ADHD, we are vulnerable, and there are a lot of scammers that try and come to that group and sell us services, sell us therapy, sell us coaching, or sell us anything shiny. And as ADHD people, sometimes we fall for that. Normal people, neurotypical people sometimes fall for that. So I have to really keep an eye on the community as close as I can. But I've tried to make this accessible, inclusive, worldwide community for and it's growing every day. Last week it was 43,000, this week it's 45,000. I'm making that accessible for everybody because I'm so passionate that if you're a parent of a neurodivergent child, or if you're neurodivergent, or if you think you're neurodivergent, you need to have access. You need to have access to this. Otherwise, you're going to struggle, and I don't want anyone to struggle. You're not going to be alone. If I'm here, I'm going to be with you, and I just want to be able to give that to everyone. So I'm very passionate about that. I don't want anyone to feel like I've felt for the last 40 years. So I'm trying to stop people feeling like that.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much, for the help and, the support that you do for communities, for people around, people with, ADHD, autism, and neurodivergent, it's really massive. And yeah, I think, when you do something that you have passion for, you
Yeah.
know, that is actually the best. That is actually the best thing you can do. And you tend to leave legacies on ground for people, for your children, and that's really massive as well. Thank you so much for doing that. Not actually being conscious about the money, but conscious about the people. Right,
Yeah.
that's really really massive. Thank you so much for that. It's really an honor to have you on the Freedom Unlocked podcast. Thank you so much for coming, Helen.
Honestly, thank you so much, and God bless you, and God bless all your listeners. Thank you. I really appreciate you letting me come on and share what ADHD is, because not all communities are. I wasn't wise to it, so I just want everyone to know so we can do the best for our children. So honestly, thank you, and God bless you so much.
Right.